Rainforests are places where warmth and water meet almost every day. They exist in regions where rainfall is frequent, temperatures change very little, and living things grow continuously rather than in short seasonal bursts. Because of this steady environment, rainforests develop layers, rhythms, and biological systems that move slowly and predictably, even when they appear dense and complex. Welcome to AstraFlow. Here, science drifts like starlight, and curiosity becomes calm. Tonight, let your thoughts slow down, your breathing soften, and your mind settle into quiet understanding. If you're listening right now, feel free to leave a comment about where you're listening from. And if this space helps you rest, a gentle like or subscription supports the channel and keeps these long, quiet explorations going. Now, let's begin and explore the science of relaxing facts about rainforests for sleep. Rainforests are defined first by rain. To be classified as a rainforest, an area typically receives more than 2 meters of rainfall each year. That water arrives steadily, not just during one season, but across many months. Because evaporation and rainfall are balanced, humidity stays high, and the air rarely becomes dry. This constant moisture shapes everything that grows there, from the smallest fungus to the tallest tree. Most rainforests are found near the equator, where sunlight is strong year-round. The angle of the sun stays relatively consistent across seasons, which means temperatures remain stable. Daytime temperatures are warm but not extreme, and nights cool only slightly. This stability removes the need for plants and animals to pause growth or enter long periods of dormancy. Instead, life continues at a slow, steady pace. Rainforests are structured vertically rather than horizontally. Instead of spreading out across open ground, life stacks upward in layers. At the top are emergent trees that rise above everything else, exposed directly to wind and sunlight. Below them lies the canopy, a dense layer of branches and leaves that forms a living roof. Most rainforest animals spend their entire lives here, rarely touching the ground. Beneath the canopy is the understory, dimmer and quieter, followed by the forest floor, where light is scarce and decomposition happens quickly. Despite their lush appearance, rainforest soils are often thin and low in nutrients. Heavy rain washes minerals downward, preventing them from accumulating. Instead of storing nutrients in the soil, rainforests keep them moving through living systems. Leaves grow, fall, decompose, and are absorbed again in a continuous loop. This fast recycling allows dense life to exist without rich ground beneath it. Rain itself follows daily patterns. In many rainforests, mornings begin warm and relatively calm. As heat builds, moisture rises into the air. By afternoon, clouds form, and rainfall releases the built-up energy. Afterward, the forest cools slightly and the cycle resets. This rhythm repeats so consistently that many plants and animals time their behavior around it. As you listen, there's no need to remember details or hold on to facts. These ideas are meant to move slowly, like the systems they describe. Rainforests are not hurried places. They grow, change, and renew themselves without sharp transitions. You can let your attention rest lightly, allowing understanding to arrive without effort. We'll continue by looking more closely at what defines a rainforest as a biological system, and why these environments support more forms of life than anywhere else on land. For now, let your breathing remain steady, and allow the quiet continuity of the forest to settle in your mind. A rainforest is not defined by how green it looks, or by the number of animals living there. Scientifically, A rainforest is defined by climate. Specifically, it is an ecosystem that receives a very high amount of rainfall spread fairly evenly across the year, combined with warm or mild temperatures and high humidity. These conditions remain stable over long periods of time, allowing biological processes to continue without strong seasonal interruptions. In most rainforests, annual rainfall exceeds 2,000 millimeters. This water does not arrive all at once. Instead, it falls frequently, often in short but regular rain events. Because rain is so consistent, the air rarely dries out. Humidity remains high both day and night, which affects how plants grow, how animals regulate body temperature, and how nutrients move through the environment. Temperature is the second defining factor. Tropical rainforests, which make up the largest portion of the world's rainforests, typically stay between about 20 and 30 degrees Celsius throughout the year. There is little difference between seasons. Day and night, temperatures change more than summer and winter temperatures do. This lack of seasonal contrast means plants do not need to shed leaves, stop growing, or conserve energy for cold periods. Growth becomes continuous rather than cyclical. Because of this continuity, rainforest plants invest energy differently than plants in temperate regions. Instead of thick bark or seasonal defences, many focus on rapid growth, flexible structures, and efficient water handling. Leaves are often broad to capture light, yet shaped to shed excess water quickly. Roots tend to spread outward rather than downward, staying close to the surface where nutrients briefly appear before being recycled. Rainforests also differ from other forests in how life is organised. In many ecosystems, the ground plays a central role. In rainforests, much of life happens above the ground. Branches, vines, and leaves form networks in the air, creating habitats that never touch soil. This vertical organisation allows many species to coexist by occupying slightly different spaces, even within the same square metre of forest. Another defining feature is constant biological activity. In colder or drier ecosystems, growth slows or stops during unfavourable periods. In rainforests, there is no true pause. Microorganisms break down organic material continuously. Plants photosynthesize daily. Animals feed, move, and reproduce throughout the year. The ecosystem is always active but rarely chaotic. Processes happen steadily, often quietly. It is important to note that rainforests are not uniform. There are lowland rainforests, montane rainforests, flooded rainforests, and temperate rainforests. Each follows the same basic principles of moisture and stability, but with variations in temperature, elevation, and species composition. What unites them is not appearance, but function. As you rest with this idea, notice how simple the definition becomes. A rainforest is an ecosystem shaped by steady rain and stable temperature. From those two conditions, complexity emerges naturally. You do not need to force understanding. Like the forest itself, clarity builds gradually, layer by layer. In the next part, we will look at where rainforests are found on Earth and why their locations follow clear physical patterns related to sunlight and global circulation. Rainforests are not scattered randomly across the planet. Their locations follow clear patterns shaped by sunlight, atmospheric circulation, and geography. When you look at a global map, most rainforests form a wide band around the equator, where the Earth receives the most direct and consistent solar energy throughout the year. Near the equator, sunlight strikes the surface at a high angle. This delivers more energy per square metre than at higher latitudes, where sunlight arrives more obliquely. Warm air near the surface rises as it heats, carrying moisture upward. As this air cools at higher altitudes, water vapor condenses into clouds and falls as rain. This process repeats daily, creating regions where rainfall is frequent and predictable. These zones are where tropical rainforests develop. This global circulation pattern is part of what scientists call the Hadley cells. Warm, moist air rises near the equator, moves outward, cools, and eventually sinks at subtropical latitudes. Where air is rising, rain is common. Where air is sinking, dry climates such as deserts are more likely to form. Rainforests sit beneath the rising branches of this circulation, benefiting from continuous atmospheric motion. Because of this, the largest rainforests are found in three main regions. The Amazon basin in South America contains the largest continuous rainforest on Earth. Central Africa hosts the Congo Basin rainforest, the second largest. Southeast Asia supports extensive rainforests spread across islands and peninsulas, shaped by warm oceans and monsoon systems. Each region follows the same climatic rules, even though the species within them differ greatly. Rainforests also exist outside the tropics. Temperate rainforests form in coastal regions where moist ocean air meets cooler land. These forests are found in places like the Pacific Northwest of North America, southern Chile, parts of New Zealand, and coastal regions of Australia. While temperatures are lower, rainfall remains high due to ocean-driven weather systems. Fog and persistent drizzle replace tropical downpours, but the result is similar. Constant moisture supports dense plant growth. Elevation also influences rainforest location. Montane rainforests form on mountain slopes where moist air is forced upward. As air rises along the terrain, it cools and releases moisture. These cloud forests are often covered in mist, with plants adapted to absorb water directly from the air. Even without heavy rainfall, constant condensation provides enough moisture to sustain rainforest conditions. Proximity to large bodies of water plays an important role as well. Oceans act as massive reservoirs of heat and moisture. Warm sea surfaces increase evaporation, feeding nearby rain systems. This is why many rainforests are found along coasts or within island chains, where ocean air moves easily inland. Despite their wide distribution, rainforests occupy only a small fraction of Earth's total land area. Yet within that limited space, they host an extraordinary share of terrestrial life. Their placement on the planet is precise, shaped by physics rather than chance. Where energy, water, and atmospheric movement align, rainforests emerge. As you take in this pattern, you can let the image of the planet settle gently in your mind. Warm air rising, moisture cycling, forests forming where conditions allow. There is no rush to visualize everything clearly. Understanding can remain soft, like cloud cover drifting slowly across the equator. In the next part, we'll explore the daily rhythm of rainfall itself, and why rain in these forests often follows a predictable daily cycle rather than a seasonal one. In many rainforests, rain follows a daily rhythm rather than a seasonal one. This pattern is closely tied to the way heat moves through the atmosphere over the course of a single day. Unlike temperate regions, where weather can change unpredictably, rainforest climates often repeat familiar cycles with small variations. The day usually begins warm and humid. Overnight, the forest releases stored heat slowly, and moisture remains suspended in the air. As the sun rises, sunlight warms the ground, the leaves, and the surrounding air. Because the forest is dense and dark near the surface, heat builds gradually rather than sharply. This steady warming allows water to evaporate continuously from soil, leaves, and nearby rivers. As warm, moist air rises, it expands and cools. Cooling air can no longer hold as much water vapour, so tiny droplets begin to form. Over several hours, these droplets gather into clouds. By early to mid-afternoon, cloud cover thickens and rainfall often begins. This rain is not usually violent. It tends to fall steadily, sometimes heavily, but without the dramatic temperature changes associated with storms in other climates. After rain falls, the air cools slightly. The forest surface becomes wet again, leaves drip slowly, and evaporation resumes at a gentler pace. By evening, rainfall tapers off, clouds thin, and heat dissipates upward. Night brings a quieter phase, but moisture never fully leaves the system. The next morning, the cycle begins again. This daily pattern benefits life in subtle ways. Plants can rely on regular water without storing large reserves. Animals adapt their activity to predictable rain times, feeding or resting accordingly. Even microorganisms in the soil respond to these moisture rhythms, increasing or slowing activity as conditions shift. Because rainfall is frequent but brief, flooding is often limited. Water is absorbed quickly by roots, leaf surfaces, and organic debris. Rivers rise and fall gradually rather than violently. This stability allows the forest structure to remain intact over long periods, reducing large-scale disturbance. It is also worth noting that not all rainforest rain arrives as heavy showers. Mist, light drizzle, and condensation play important roles, especially in higher elevations. In cloud forests, water droplets cling to leaves directly from fog, providing hydration without rainfall at all. As you rest with this idea, notice how predictable cycles can feel calming. The rainforest does not wait anxiously for rain, it expects it. Each day unfolds in a familiar sequence, guided by heat, moisture, and gravity. You don't need to track the details. Let the repetition itself become soothing. In the next part, we'll begin to explore the vertical structure of the rainforest, starting with the layers that divide light, space, and life from top to bottom. Rainforests are organized vertically, forming distinct layers that divide space, light, and life. This layered structure is one of the most important features of rainforest ecosystems. Rather than spreading evenly across the ground, plants and animals arrange themselves from the forest floor up into the air, creating multiple living zones stacked above one another. At the very top is the emergent layer. This layer is made up of the tallest trees, which rise above the rest of the forest and are fully exposed to sunlight, wind, and rain. These trees can grow more than 50 meters tall. Their crowns are spaced apart, allowing them to stand individually rather than forming a continuous cover. Life here must tolerate stronger winds, direct sunlight, and occasional dryness between rains. Below the emergent layer lies the canopy. This is the densest and most biologically active part of the rainforest. Tree crowns overlap here, forming a continuous roof of leaves and branches. The canopy intercepts most of the sunlight and rainfall before it ever reaches the ground. Because light is abundant and temperatures remain stable, this layer supports an enormous variety of life. Many animals never descend from the canopy at all. Beneath the canopy is the understory. This layer receives only filtered light, often less than 10% of what reaches the top of the forest. Plants growing here have adapted to low-light conditions. Leaves tend to be broad and dark, maximizing light absorption. Growth is slower but steady. The understory is quieter, cooler, and more sheltered than the upper layers. At the bottom is the forest floor. This area receives very little direct sunlight. Instead of dense plant growth, The forest floor is dominated by leaf litter, fallen branches, fungi, and decomposing organic material. While it may appear less alive, this layer is critical. Decomposition happens quickly here, returning nutrients to the system and supporting new growth above. Each layer creates its own microclimate. Temperature, humidity, wind exposure, and light availability change gradually as you move upward or downward. Animals and plants specialize in narrow vertical ranges, reducing competition and allowing many species to coexist in a small area. This vertical arrangement also affects movement. Vines, lianas, and epiphytes connect layers, allowing animals to travel without touching the ground. These connections turn the forest into a three-dimensional network rather than a flat landscape. As you consider this structure, there's no need to visualize every detail. You can simply notice the idea of gentle stacking, life arranged in layers, each supporting the next. Nothing is crowded, nothing is rushed, everything occupies its place. In the next part, we'll focus more closely on the canopy itself and why so much rainforest life chooses to remain high above the ground. The canopy is often described as the heart of the rainforest, because this is where most of its life is concentrated. Formed by overlapping tree crowns, the canopy creates a continuous layer of leaves, branches and stems that stretches across the forest. From above, it appears almost like a green ocean, gently rising and falling with the height of the trees beneath it. Sunlight reaches the canopy first. Leaves here receive direct light for many hours each day, making this layer the primary site of photosynthesis. Because energy is most available here, plants grow densely and animals follow. Insects, birds, mammals and reptiles all find food and shelter within this elevated space. For many species, the canopy is not just a place to visit but a permanent home. The structure of the canopy also controls the forest below. When rain falls, much of it is intercepted by leaves and branches. Water drips slowly downward rather than hitting the ground all at once. This reduces erosion and spreads moisture evenly through the layers. Similarly, the canopy filters sunlight, creating a gradient of light that shapes plant growth beneath it. Living in the canopy requires specific adaptations. Animals often have strong grips, flexible limbs, or specialized tails to navigate branches. Movement here is often horizontal rather than vertical. Instead of climbing up and down, animals travel laterally from tree to tree using vines and branches as natural pathways. Plants also adapt to canopy conditions. Some grow directly on other plants without touching the ground. These epiphytes use trees only as support, not as a source of nutrients. They absorb water from rain, mist and air. Orchids, bromeliads and mosses commonly live this way, adding further layers of life within the canopy itself. Because the canopy is so active, it plays a major role in regulating the rainforest's climate. Through transpiration, leaves release water vapor into the air. This process cools the forest and contributes to cloud formation. Over time, the canopy helps maintain the very conditions that allow the rainforest to exist. Despite its density, the canopy is not chaotic. Movement is often slow and deliberate. Leaves shift gently with air currents. Animals pause frequently, conserving energy. Even at midday, there is a sense of steady balance rather than constant motion. As you rest with this idea, imagine the canopy not as a crowded place, but as a wide, living ceiling. It holds light, water, and life in place, distributing them downward with patience. You don't need to follow every branch. Let the structure itself feel supportive. In the next part, we'll look at how light and shade shape life in the rainforest, and why the struggle for light remains gentle rather than aggressive. In a rainforest, light is one of the most important resources, yet it is unevenly distributed. Because the canopy captures most of the sunlight, only a small fraction reaches the layers below. This creates a vertical gradient of light, where conditions change gradually rather than abruptly. Plants and animals adjust to this pattern in calm, efficient ways. At the top of the forest, sunlight is abundant. Leaves in the emergent layer and upper canopy are exposed to direct rays for many hours each day. These leaves tend to be smaller, thicker, and sometimes coated with waxy surfaces that prevent water loss and protect against intense light. Photosynthesis happens rapidly here, but plants must also manage heat and evaporation. As light filters downward, it becomes scattered and softened. In the understory, illumination arrives as brief sun flecks rather than continuous brightness. These moving patches of light shift as leaves above sway gently. Plants growing here have adapted to use even small amounts of light efficiently. Their leaves are often broad and dark, allowing them to capture scattered photons without needing direct exposure. Rather than competing aggressively, rainforest plants tend to specialize. Some grow tall quickly, investing energy in height. Others remain low and shade-tolerant, growing slowly but steadily. This division reduces direct competition and allows many species to coexist within the same space. Light becomes a shared resource rather than a constant struggle. Light availability also influences behavior. Many animals time their activity around brightness levels rather than clock hours. Insects emerge during specific light conditions. Birds move between layers depending on the time of day. Even microorganisms respond to subtle changes in illumination and temperature. When a tree falls, light suddenly reaches the forest floor. These small gaps create temporary windows of opportunity. Seeds that have waited patiently in the soil begin to grow. Over time, the gap fills again, and light distribution returns to its layered pattern. This process happens continuously, allowing renewal without large-scale disruption. As you sit with this idea, notice how shade in the rainforest is not absence, but diffusion. Light is softened, slowed, and spread across space. Nothing demands full brightness to exist. Growth continues even in dim conditions. In the next part, we'll explore why rainforest trees grow so tall while keeping their roots close to the surface, and how this structure supports stability in wet environments. Rainforest trees are known for their height. Many species grow tall, straight trunks that rise quickly toward the light. Some reach heights of 40 or even 50 meters, lifting their leaves above the surrounding canopy. This vertical growth allows them to access sunlight in a crowded environment where light is limited near the ground. Despite their height, most rainforest trees do not have deep roots. Instead of growing downward, their roots spread outward, forming wide, shallow networks just below the surface. This structure may seem surprising, but it is well suited to the conditions of the rainforest. Heavy rainfall keeps the upper layers of soil moist, but it also washes nutrients away quickly. Most available nutrients are found near the surface, released by decomposing leaves and organic material. By spreading roots horizontally, trees can absorb nutrients as soon as they appear. Deep roots would provide little advantage in soils where minerals do not accumulate. Shallow root systems also help trees anchor themselves in soft, wet ground. Many large rainforest trees develop buttress roots, thick, flared supports at the base of the trunk. These roots extend above the soil, spreading outward like fins. They provide stability against wind and help distribute the tree's weight across a wider area. Because roots are close to the surface, trees rely on each other for protection. The dense forest reduces wind speed near the ground, lowering the risk of uprooting. When trees grow close together, their root systems may even intertwine, increasing overall stability. The forest functions as a connected structure rather than a collection of isolated individuals. This growth strategy reflects the rainforest's emphasis on cooperation through structure rather than competition through force. Trees do not need to resist freezing temperatures or drought. Instead, they adapt to constant moisture and soft soil. Height becomes a way to access light, while wide roots provide balance. As you reflect on this, imagine tall forms supported quietly from below, strength distributed rather than concentrated. Nothing is rigid. Everything adjusts to conditions without tension. In the next part, we'll look more closely at rainforest leaves and how their shape and surface help them manage constant rainfall efficiently. In a rainforest, rain is not an occasional event. It is a constant presence. Because of this, leaves have evolved shapes and surfaces that help them handle large amounts of water without damage. These adaptations allow plants to continue photosynthesis while avoiding problems caused by excess moisture. One of the most common features of rainforest leaves is the drip tip. A drip tip is a narrow, pointed extension at the end of a leaf. It allows water to collect and run off quickly rather than pooling on the surface. When water drains efficiently, it reduces the growth of algae, fungi and bacteria that could block sunlight or damage tissue. Leaf surfaces are often smooth and coated with the thin, waxy layer. This coating makes water bead and slide off rather than soak in. By shedding water quickly, leaves reduce their weight during rainfall, lowering the risk of tearing or bending. This also helps maintain airflow around the leaf surface, which is important for gas exchange. Many rainforest leaves are broad, especially in shaded layers. Their large surface area helps capture scattered light. At the same time, the leaf structure channels water away efficiently. Veins guide moisture toward the edges, where it can drip downward without lingering. Leaf arrangement also matters. In some species, leaves are angled rather than flat. This positioning allows rain to fall through the canopy in a controlled way, reducing impact on lower leaves and soil. Over time, this arrangement contributes to the forest's gentle handling of water. These adaptations are not dramatic or forceful. They are subtle adjustments that improve efficiency over long periods. No single leaf needs to resist rain completely. Instead, it guides water along predictable paths, allowing rainfall to move through the forest smoothly. As you rest with this idea, notice how small design choices create calm outcomes. Water moves where it is allowed to move. Nothing is blocked or trapped. Flow becomes the solution. In the next part, we'll explore temperature in rainforests and why warmth remains steady rather than extreme throughout the year. One of the defining features of rainforests is how little their temperatures change over time. Unlike many regions where seasons bring clear shifts between hot and cold, rainforests remain warm throughout the year. This stability shapes how plants grow, how animals behave, and how energy moves through the ecosystem. In tropical rainforests, average temperatures usually stay between about 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. Daytime warmth is consistent, and nights cool only slightly. There are no long cold periods, no frost, and no freezing conditions. Because of this, living organisms do not need to prepare for extreme temperature changes. Their structures and behaviours can remain relatively constant. This steady warmth is a direct result of the sun's position. Near the equator, sunlight arrives at a high angle year-round. The amount of solar energy reaching the surface changes very little from month to month. Heat is absorbed by the forest, stored in moisture and plant tissue, and released slowly into the air. The result is a buffered environment where sudden temperature swings are rare. Constant warmth allows biological processes to continue without interruption. Enzymes that control growth and metabolism work best within specific temperature ranges. In rainforests, those ranges are maintained naturally. Plants can photosynthesize every day. Animals do not need to hibernate or migrate long distances to escape cold. Reproduction, feeding, and growth occur steadily rather than in bursts. Warmth also influences moisture. Warm air can hold more water vapor than cold air. This supports high humidity, which in turn reduces water loss from plants and animals. Many rainforest species have thin skin or delicate tissues that would dry out quickly in drier climates. The combination of warmth and humidity allows these forms of life to exist without heavy protective barriers. Because temperatures are predictable, energy use becomes efficient. Animals often move slowly, conserving calories. Sloths, for example, rely on low-energy diets and benefit from not needing to generate extra heat. Even more active animals adjust their schedules, resting during the warmest parts of the day and becoming active during cooler hours. This stable warmth also shapes sound, scent, and movement. Warm air carries smells and sounds differently than cold air. Calls travel farther. Chemical signals disperse more evenly. The forest communicates quietly but continuously through these channels. As you sit with this idea, you can notice how comfort comes from consistency. There is no need for preparation or defense against cold. The environment provides what is needed day after day. You don't need to hold on to the details. Let the sense of steady warmth settle in your awareness. In the next part, we'll explore why rainforests support such high biodiversity and how stable conditions allow so many species to share the same space. Rainforests contain more species of plants and animals than any other land ecosystem on Earth. This high biodiversity is not accidental. It emerges from long periods of environmental stability, combined with the layered structure and steady availability of resources. Because rainforests do not experience strong seasonal changes, species can specialize narrowly. Plants and animals evolve to occupy specific roles, feeding on particular foods, living in certain layers, or being active at precise times. When resources are reliable, there is less pressure to be generalists. Specialization allows many species to coexist without direct competition. The vertical layering of the forest increases available space. Instead of all life competing on the ground, organisms spread upward into the canopy and downward into leaf litter and soil. Each layer provides different light, moisture, and temperature conditions. This creates many small niches within a relatively small area. Rainforests have also existed for very long periods without major disruptions such as ice ages or widespread droughts. Over millions of years, populations have had time to diverge slowly, adapting to subtle differences in habitat. New species form not through sudden change, but through gradual separation and fine-tuning. Interactions between species further increase diversity. Pollination, seed dispersal, and predator-prey relationships encourage coevolution. As one species adapts, others respond. Over time, these interactions create complex networks where changes ripple gently rather than collapse the system. Importantly, high biodiversity does not mean constant competition. In rainforests, many species occur at low population densities. Instead of large numbers of one species dominating an area, There are often small numbers of many species sharing space. This reduces resource pressure and increases resilience. From a scientific perspective, biodiversity increases stability. When many species perform similar roles, the ecosystem can absorb change more easily. If one species declines, others may partially fill its role. This redundancy helps maintain balance without sharp shifts. As you listen, you don't need to imagine every species or interaction. You can simply notice the idea of quiet abundance. Many forms of life existing side by side, each occupying a narrow space, none overwhelming the whole. In the next part, we'll focus on insects, which make up the majority of animal life in rainforests and quietly support many of these systems. In rainforests, insects make up the largest share of animal life by both number and diversity. While large mammals and colourful birds often draw attention, it is insects that quietly perform much of the work that keeps the ecosystem functioning. Their presence is constant, though often unnoticed. Insects thrive in rainforests because conditions are consistently warm and moist. These environments allow insects to remain active year-round without needing to survive cold seasons. Life cycles continue without interruption. Eggs hatch, larvae develop, and adults reproduce continuously rather than in short seasonal bursts. Many insects specialize in very specific roles. Some feed on certain plant species, others pollinate flowers, break down organic matter, or control populations of other insects. This specialization reduces direct competition and allows many species to occupy small ecological niches within the same area. Decomposition is one of the most important roles insects play. Beetles, ants, termites, and flies help break down fallen leaves, dead wood, and animal remains. This process releases nutrients back into the soil and makes them available to plants again. Without insects, this recycling would slow dramatically. Insects are also essential for pollination. In dense forests where wind movement is limited, insects provide reliable transport of pollen between flowers. Many rainforest plants depend on a single species or small group of insects to reproduce. These relationships often develop over long periods, becoming finely tuned. Insects themselves are a major food source. Birds, reptiles, amphibians, and mammals rely on them for energy. Even small changes in insect populations can affect many other species, which is why their steady presence is so important. Despite their numbers, insects rarely dominate in visible ways. Their activity is distributed across millions of small interactions rather than large dramatic events. This makes their contribution easy to overlook, but deeply foundational. As you sit with this idea, notice how systems depend on quiet, repeated actions. Small movements, continuous work, no need for recognition. Insects maintain balance simply by doing what they do each day. In the next part, we'll turn our attention to birds of the rainforest canopy and how they adapt to dense vegetation and layered space. Birds are among the most visible animals in rainforests, especially in the canopy where light, food, and open space are more available. Their presence is shaped by the layered structure of the forest and by the need to move efficiently through dense vegetation. Rather than long, open flights, rainforest birds often fly in short bursts, weaving between branches and leaves. Many canopy birds have compact bodies and rounded wings. This wing shape allows for quick turns and controlled movement rather than speed. Flying through a rainforest is less about distance and more about precision. Birds move from perch to perch, conserving energy while staying alert to food and predators. Food sources in the canopy are varied. Some birds feed on fruit, others on insects, nectar, or small animals. Because different foods appear at different times and places, birds often specialize. This reduces competition and allows multiple species to share the same space without conflict. A single tree may support many bird species, each using it in a slightly different way. Coloration among rainforest birds serves several functions. Bright colors can help species recognize one another in dim, filtered light. At the same time, patterns often break up outlines, making birds less visible to predators. In shaded environments, contrast matters more than brightness. Sound is another key adaptation. Dense vegetation limits visibility, so birds rely heavily on calls. Rainforest bird songs are often clear, repetitive, and pitched to travel through foliage. These sounds mark territory, attract mates, and maintain spacing between individuals. The result is a forest that is rarely silent, even when movement is minimal. Birds also play important ecological roles. By eating fruit and moving between trees, they help disperse seeds across the forest. Some species travel long distances each day, spreading plant life beyond a single area. Others control insect populations, contributing to balance within the system. Activity patterns vary. Some birds are most active in early morning when temperatures are cooler. Others move later in the day or near dusk. These staggered schedules reduce overlap and allow more species to coexist. As you listen, you don't need to track each behavior. You can simply notice how movement becomes efficient rather than excessive. Short flights, brief calls, purposeful pauses, the canopy remains active without becoming hurried. In the next part, we'll explore mammals that live in the trees and how slow, energy-efficient movement supports life high above the ground. Many rainforest mammals spend most or all of their lives in the trees. This arboreal lifestyle allows them to access food in the canopy while avoiding many ground-level predators. Living above the forest floor also means adapting to a world of branches, gaps, and vertical space rather than flat terrain. Tree-dwelling mammals often have strong limbs and flexible joints. Hands and feet are adapted for gripping rather than running. Long fingers, curved claws, or opposable thumbs help them hold branches securely. Tails may act as additional supports, providing balance or even functioning as grasping tools. Energy use is a key factor in arboreal life. Moving through trees requires strength and control, but rainforests do not encourage constant motion. Many mammals conserve energy by moving slowly and deliberately. Sloths are a clear example. Their slow metabolism allows them to survive on leaves that provide limited energy. By moving infrequently, they reduce the calories they need each day. Other mammals, such as certain monkeys, are more active but still efficient. They travel along familiar routes, using connected branches to avoid unnecessary climbing. Movement is often planned rather than reactive. This efficiency reduces risk and conserves energy in a complex environment. Food availability shapes behavior. Fruits, leaves, insects, and nectar appear at different times and locations. Arboreal mammals often have well-developed memory, allowing them to remember which trees produce food and when. Rather than searching randomly, they follow mental maps built over long periods. Social structure varies. Some species live in groups, sharing information and protection. Others are solitary, maintaining quiet territories. In dense forests where visibility is limited, communication relies on sound and scent rather than sight. Living in the trees also provides safety. Predators are less common in the canopy, and escape routes are three-dimensional. Animals can move upward, sideways, or downward, choosing paths that suit their body type and speed. As you rest with this idea, notice how slowness becomes an advantage rather than a weakness. Careful movement, minimal effort, energy saved over time. The trees support life that does not rush. In the next part, we'll explore amphibians and their close relationship with moisture, and why rainforests are especially suited to their delicate bodies. Amphibians are closely tied to moisture, and rainforests provide nearly ideal conditions for them. Frogs, toads, salamanders, and related species depend on damp environments because their skin is permeable. Unlike reptiles or mammals, amphibians do not rely solely on lungs. Many absorb oxygen and water directly through their skin, which must remain moist to function properly. In a rainforest, humidity stays high both day and night. Rainfall is frequent, and shade prevents surfaces from drying out quickly. These conditions reduce the risk of dehydration, allowing amphibians to remain active for longer periods. They can move, feed, and reproduce without needing to retreat constantly to water sources. Many rainforest amphibians live in very specific microhabitats. Some remain near streams or ponds. Others live in leaf litter, where moisture is trapped beneath fallen leaves. Some species even inhabit water-filled spaces in plants, such as bromeliads, completing their entire life cycle high above the ground without ever touching a pond or river. Because amphibian eggs lack hard shells, they are sensitive to drying. Rainforests allow a wide range of reproductive strategies. Eggs may be laid in water, on leaves, in soil, or carried by adults until they hatch. The stable moisture environment increases survival rates and supports high species diversity. Amphibians are also important indicators of environmental health. Because their skin readily absorbs substances from the environment, they're sensitive to changes in water quality, temperature, and chemical balance. Scientists often monitor amphibian populations to understand subtle shifts in rainforest conditions. Activity patterns are shaped by moisture and temperature rather than daylight alone. Many amphibians are most active at night, when evaporation slows and humidity rises further. Their calls often emerge after rain, filling the forest with sound that signals readiness to reproduce rather than aggression. As you consider this, notice how dependence can create balance. Amphibians do not resist moisture. They rely on it completely. Their bodies are shaped by the environment rather than protected from it. In the next part, we'll look at reptiles and how consistent warmth allows them to regulate body temperature without constant movement. Reptiles in rainforests benefit greatly from the stable temperatures of their environment. As ectothermic animals, reptiles do not generate their own body heat. Instead, they rely on external warmth to regulate their internal temperature. In climates with large temperature swings, this can limit activity. In rainforests, consistency allows reptiles to remain active without constant adjustment. Because temperatures stay within a narrow range, reptiles do not need long periods of basking to warm up. They can move, hunt, and digest food throughout the day and night, with only small shifts in behaviour. Shade, sunlit patches, and warm surfaces are all available within short distances, allowing fine control without effort. Rainforest reptiles include snakes, lizards, turtles, and crocodilians. Many species are adapted to life in trees, water, or leaf litter. Body shapes vary, but most emphasize flexibility and camouflage rather than speed. Movement is often slow and deliberate, conserving energy while remaining alert. Moisture also plays a role. High humidity reduces water loss through skin, allowing reptiles to maintain hydration more easily than in dry environments. This is especially important for species with thin or smooth scales that would otherwise lose moisture quickly. Reptiles often rely on stillness as a strategy. Camouflage patterns blend with leaves, bark, or branches. Remaining motionless reduces energy use and makes detection less likely. In dense forests, this strategy is highly effective. Reproduction benefits from stable conditions as well. Eggs develop without the risk of freezing or overheating. Some species guard their nests, while others rely on environmental stability to ensure successful development. As you sit with this idea, notice how warmth reduces urgency. There is no need to chase heat or avoid cold. The environment provides what is needed, and behavior can remain calm and measured. In the next part, we'll explore fungi and their role in decomposition, focusing on how rainforests recycle organic material efficiently. Fungi play a quiet but essential role in rainforest ecosystems. While plants capture energy from sunlight and animals move that energy through food webs, fungi are responsible for returning nutrients back to the system. In warm, wet conditions, decomposition happens continuously, and fungi are central to that process. Rainforests produce a large amount of organic material every day. Leaves fall, branches break, fruits drop, and organisms complete their life cycles. Without rapid decomposition, this material would accumulate. Instead, fungi break down complex substances such as cellulose and lignin, turning them into simpler compounds that can be reused by plants. Moisture is critical for fungal activity. High humidity and frequent rainfall allow fungal networks to grow through soil, leaf litter, and decaying wood. These networks, called mycelium, spread quietly below the surface, connecting large areas of the forest floor. Through them, nutrients move efficiently from dead material back into living roots. Fungi also form close partnerships with plants. Many rainforest trees rely on mycorrhizal fungi, which attach to their roots. In this relationship, fungi help plants absorb water and nutrients more effectively. In return, plants supply fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis. This exchange increases efficiency for both sides without visible effort. Because temperatures remain warm, decomposition does not slow down seasonally. Nutrients are released quickly, which is why rainforest soils remain thin. Instead of storing fertility in the ground, the ecosystem keeps nutrients circulating through living organisms. Fungi make this circulation possible. Fungi themselves come in many forms. Some appear as mushrooms after rainfall, briefly visible before fading again. Others remain unseen, working continuously within wood and soil. Their presence is constant, even when unnoticed. As you rest with this idea, notice how endings become beginnings. Nothing is wasted. Materials change form and return gently to the system. Decomposition here is not decay in the negative sense, but transformation. In the next part, we'll look more closely at nutrient cycling as a whole, and why rainforest abundance depends on movement rather than storage. In rainforests, nutrients move quickly. Unlike ecosystems where minerals accumulate in deep, rich soils, rainforests rely on constant circulation. The warmth and moisture that support dense life also speed up chemical and biological processes. As a result, nutrients rarely remain in one place for long. When leaves fall to the forest floor, they begin decomposing almost immediately. Microorganisms, fungi, and insects break them down within days or weeks. Nutrients released during this process are quickly absorbed by roots, fungi, or other organisms before rain can wash them away. This rapid exchange keeps life functioning even though the soil itself contains relatively little stored fertility. Plant roots are adapted to this system. Many remain close to the surface where nutrients appear briefly. Fine root hairs and fungal partnerships increase the chance of capturing minerals before they are lost. Instead of depending on long-term reserves, rainforest plants rely on timing and proximity. Because nutrients are always moving, balance matters. If one part of the system slows down, others feel the effect. When decomposition is interrupted, plant growth weakens. When plant growth declines, less organic material returns to the soil. This tight coupling encourages stability rather than excess. This form of cycling also limits waste. Materials do not accumulate. Energy passes through living forms, changes state, and returns again. The system remains productive without needing deep storage. As you consider this, notice how flow replaces accumulation. Nothing needs to be held tightly. Movement itself sustains abundance. In the next part, we'll focus on fallen leaves and the forest floor, where this quiet renewal begins each day. The forest floor of a rainforest is covered in fallen leaves, small branches, fruit skins, and fragments of plant material. This layer may look still, but it is one of the most active zones in the ecosystem. Renewal begins here, quietly and continuously, without visible boundaries between decay and growth. When leaves fall, they do not remain intact for long. Warm temperatures and high moisture allow bacteria, fungi, and insects to begin breaking them down almost immediately. Edges soften, colours fade, and structure loosens. Within a short time, what was once part of the canopy becomes part of the soil system again. This process happens close to the surface. Because nutrients are released quickly, plants have adapted to capture them without delay. Fine roots spread through the leaf litter, ready to absorb minerals as they appear. Fungal networks connect fallen material directly to living roots, shortening the path between breakdown and reuse. The forest floor is dim, receiving very little sunlight. As a result, plant growth here is limited, but biological activity is not. Decomposition, nutrient transfer, and soil formation all continue steadily. The floor acts as a processing layer rather than a storage layer. Small animals contribute to this renewal. Insects shred leaves into smaller pieces, increasing surface area for microbes. Worms and other invertebrates mix organic material into the soil. Each movement is small, but together they keep materials circulating. Because this process never truly stops, the forest avoids build-up. There are no thick layers of dead material lasting for years. Everything moves forward, changing form as it goes. What falls becomes part of what grows next. As you rest with this idea, notice how renewal does not require effort or attention. It happens naturally, step by step. You don't need to track the details. Let the sense of quiet continuity settle. In the next part, we'll explore how pollination works in dense forests and why insects, birds, and bats become essential messengers between plants. Pollination in rainforests works differently than in open landscapes. Dense vegetation limits wind movement, and flowers are often hidden beneath layers of leaves. Because of this, most rainforest plants rely on animals rather than air currents to move pollen from one flower to another. Insects are the primary pollinators. Bees, beetles, butterflies, moths, and flies visit flowers in search of nectar or pollen. As they move, pollen grains attach to their bodies and are carried to the next flower. Many rainforest plants have evolved very specific relationships with their pollinators, depending on one species or a small group to reproduce successfully. Birds also play a role, especially hummingbirds and other nectar-feeding species. Their long beaks and precise hovering allow them to reach flowers that insects cannot. As they feed, Pollen brushes against their feathers or bills. Because birds move frequently between trees, they help spread genetic material across wider areas of the forest. In some cases, bats act as pollinators. These nocturnal animals visit flowers that open at night and produce strong scents. Bat-pollinated flowers are often pale and sturdy, designed to withstand repeated visits. This nighttime pollination adds another layer to the rainforest's continuous activity cycle. Pollination timing is carefully aligned with environmental conditions. Some flowers open only during certain hours of the day or night. Others release scent or nectar after rain, when pollinators are most active. These rhythms reduce wasted energy and increase the chance of successful reproduction. Because space is limited, many plants avoid attracting the same pollinators at the same time. Flowering schedules are staggered across seasons and even within weeks. This reduces competition and allows pollinators to move steadily from one species to the next. As you sit with this idea, notice how communication replaces force. Plants do not push pollen outward. They invite movement through scent, colour and timing. The exchange is gentle and precise. In the next part we'll look at seed dispersal and how animals help move new life through the forest without rushing. In rainforests, many plants depend on animals to move their seeds. Dense vegetation and limited wind make passive dispersal difficult, so living carriers become essential. This relationship develops gradually, shaped by mutual benefit rather than urgency. Fruits are one of the most common tools plants use for seed dispersal. By surrounding seeds with nutritious flesh, plants attract animals that eat the fruit and carry the seeds away from the parent tree. Birds, mammals, and even reptiles participate in this process. After digestion, seeds are released elsewhere, often with a small amount of natural fertilizer. This movement matters because space near the parent plant is limited. Light, nutrients, and room to grow are already occupied. By travelling even a short distance, a seed increases its chance of survival. In rainforests, dispersal distances do not need to be large. A few meters can be enough to reach a new pocket of opportunity. Different animals disperse seeds in different ways. Birds often swallow small fruits whole and move quickly through the canopy, spreading seeds across wide areas. Larger mammals may carry fruit in their mouths or drop seeds while feeding. Some animals store seeds temporarily, forgetting a portion of them and allowing new plants to grow. Timing is important. Many fruits ripen when specific animals are most active. Colours, scents, and textures signal readiness without attracting unnecessary attention. This reduces waste and increases efficiency. The forest coordinates these exchanges quietly, without visible direction. Seed dispersal also shapes plant distribution. Trees that rely on the same animal may cluster loosely along familiar routes. Over time, these patterns influence forest structure, creating subtle associations between species that share dispersal partners. Importantly, animals are not forced into this role. They participate because it meets their needs. Food is exchanged for movement. Neither side dominates the relationship. This balance helps maintain long-term stability. As you rest with this idea, notice how movement becomes gentle assistance rather than effort. Seeds travel without knowing where they will land. Animals move without intention to plant. The system functions because each part follows its own rhythm. In the next part, we'll explore the sounds of the rainforest and why even quiet movement creates a constant background of life. Rainforests are rarely silent, but their soundscape is not chaotic. Instead, it forms a continuous background made up of many small overlapping signals. These sounds come from animals, insects, weather, and even plants. each contributing quietly to the overall environment. Insects are the most consistent contributors. Their movements, wing vibrations and calls create a steady layer of sound that changes subtly throughout the day and night. During daylight hours, insects often produce higher-pitched rhythmic noises. At night, different species take over, shifting the tone without breaking continuity. Bird calls add structure to the soundscape. Rather than singing constantly, many birds vocalize at specific times. Early morning often brings a brief increase in bird sound as individuals establish spacing and communicate presence. After this period, calls become more spaced out, maintaining awareness without excess energy use. Amphibians contribute strongly after rainfall and during nighttime hours. Frog calls are usually repetitive and evenly spaced. This regularity reduces overlap between individuals, allowing many to call at once without confusion. The result is a layered sound pattern rather than a loud chorus. Rain itself shapes the acoustic environment. When rain falls on leaves, branches and soil, it creates soft, distributed noise rather than sharp impacts. The canopy breaks rainfall into smaller droplets, spreading sound gently through the layers. This steady sound can last for hours without becoming overwhelming. Even plant movement adds subtle sound. Leaves shift with air currents, branches settle slowly. These noises are low and irregular, filling gaps between animal calls. From a biological perspective, sound helps maintain spacing, timing, and coordination. From a physical perspective, dense vegetation absorbs and scatters sound, preventing echoes and sharp reflections. This creates an environment where noise remains present but softened. As you rest with this idea, notice how constant sound does not demand attention. It exists in the background, signaling continuity rather than urgency. You don't need to identify each source. Let the steady presence of sound become part of the calm. In the next part, we'll explore what happens in the rainforest after dark, and how nighttime brings a shift rather than a pause. When night arrives in the rainforest, activity does not stop. Instead, it shifts. Because temperatures remain warm and humidity stays high, nighttime brings a change in participants rather than a pause in biological processes. The forest continues its steady rhythm, guided by darkness rather than light. As the sun sets, diurnal animals gradually reduce movement. Birds settle into sheltered perches. Many insects that rely on daylight become still. At the same time, nocturnal species begin to emerge. This transition happens smoothly, without sharp boundaries between day and night. Night-active insects become more prominent. Moths, beetles, and other nocturnal species take advantage of reduced predation and cooler air. Their activity supports many other organisms, serving as food for amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. Because humidity rises slightly at night, insects face less risk of dehydration and can remain active for longer periods. Amphibians are especially active after dark. Cooler temperatures and higher moisture protect their permeable skin. Frog calls often increase at night, signalling territory or readiness to reproduce. These calls follow steady patterns, allowing many individuals to communicate at once without overlap. Mammals such as bats, small primates and rodents also rely on nighttime conditions. Bats use echolocation to navigate and find insects or fruit. Their movement through the canopy adds another layer of activity, mostly unnoticed by other animals. Small mammals forage quietly, using scent and memory more than sight. Vision changes in importance at night. Many nocturnal animals rely less on colour and more on movement, contrast, sound, or smell. Large eyes, sensitive hearing, and whiskers help them gather information without needing bright light. The forest supports these adaptations by remaining structurally consistent from day to night. Despite increased activity from some species, the overall pace remains calm. There are no sudden drops in temperature or strong winds to disrupt movement. Processes continue as they did during the day, simply rearranged in time. As you sit with this idea, notice how darkness does not mean emptiness. It means redistribution. Life shifts into new forms, new sounds, new patterns, all without breaking continuity. In the next part, we'll look at rainforest rivers and streams, and how forests shape the movement of water through the landscape. Rivers and streams are shaped quietly by the rainforest that surrounds them. In these environments, water rarely moves through open, exposed channels. Instead, it travels beneath layers of vegetation, roots and leaf litter, guided gently by the forest's structure. Rainfall reaches rivers gradually. When rain falls, the canopy intercepts much of it. Water drips from leaves, runs along branches, and filters slowly down through vines and understory plants. By the time it reaches the ground, its energy has been softened. This reduces erosion and allows soil and roots to absorb moisture before excess water reaches streams. Because of this buffering effect, rainforest rivers tend to rise and fall more steadily than rivers in deforested areas. Flooding can still occur, but it is usually slower and more predictable. Water spreads across floodplains, depositing nutrients rather than stripping them away. When levels recede, the land remains fertile and stable. Roots play an important role in guiding water movement. Tree roots bind soil together, preventing it from being washed into rivers. Fine roots and fungal networks absorb water and release it slowly, regulating flow over time. This creates a steady supply of water even during periods of reduced rainfall. Rainforest rivers support many forms of life. Fish, amphibians, insects, and microorganisms depend on shaded, nutrient-rich waters. Fallen leaves and branches provide food and shelter, linking the river ecosystem directly to the forest above. Energy moves between land and water continuously. Water temperature also remains stable. Shade from the canopy prevents overheating, while steady flow avoids sudden cooling. This stability allows aquatic organisms to maintain consistent activity and growth. As you reflect on this, notice how movement is guided rather than forced. Water does not rush unless it must. It follows paths shaped by living structures, slowing when slowed, flowing when allowed. In the next part, we'll explore how trees themselves contribute to rainfall through transpiration, and how forests help create the clouds above them. Rainforests do more than receive rainfall. They actively help create it. One of the key processes behind this is transpiration, the release of water vapor from plant leaves into the atmosphere. Through this quiet exchange, trees become part of the water cycle that sustains the forest itself. During the day, rainforest plants absorb water through their roots. This water travels upward through the trunk and branches and eventually reaches the leaves. There, small openings called stomata allow water vapor to escape into the air. This release is not wasteful. It helps regulate temperature inside the leaf and supports the movement of nutrients within the plant. Because rainforests contain an immense number of leaves, transpiration happens at a large scale. Collectively, trees release vast amounts of moisture into the atmosphere. This added humidity increases the likelihood of cloud formation, especially in warm air that is already rising due to solar heating. As moist air rises above the forest, it cools. Cooling causes water vapor to condense into tiny droplets, forming clouds. Over time, these clouds can grow dense enough to release rain. often back onto the same forest that contributed the moisture. This creates a feedback loop where the forest helps maintain its own rainfall. In some regions, this process is strong enough to influence weather patterns far beyond the forest itself. Moisture released by large rainforests can travel long distances, contributing to rainfall in other areas. Scientists sometimes refer to this as atmospheric rivers of water vapor, shaped in part by vegetation below. This process also helps moderate temperature. As water evaporates from leaves, it absorbs heat, cooling the surrounding air. This natural cooling effect helps keep rainforest climates stable and prevents extreme heat buildup during the day. As you sit with this idea, notice how participation replaces control. Trees do not command the weather. They contribute to it quietly, through countless small exchanges that add up over time. In the next part, we'll look at the role rainforests play in carbon cycling, and how they store and release carbon without exaggeration or urgency. Rainforests play an important role in the movement of carbon through Earth's systems. This role is often simplified, but the reality is more balanced and steady than dramatic. Rainforests do not constantly add oxygen to the atmosphere in large excess, nor do they act as permanent carbon sinks without limits. Instead, they participate in continuous exchange. Through photosynthesis, plants absorb carbon dioxide from the air and use energy from sunlight to build sugars and other organic molecules. This process stores carbon in leaves, wood, roots, and other tissues. At the same time, plants release oxygen as a byproduct. Because rainforest plants photosynthesize year-round, this exchange happens continuously rather than seasonally. Carbon does not remain locked away indefinitely. When leaves fall, when organisms respire, and when decomposition occurs, carbon returns to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Microorganisms, fungi, insects, and animals all contribute to this release through normal metabolic processes. In this way, rainforests both absorb and release carbon at the same time. What makes rainforests significant is not one-directional storage, but balance. Large amounts of carbon are held within living biomass at any given moment. As long as the forest remains intact, this carbon stays within the biological system, moving slowly between living and decomposing forms rather than entering the atmosphere rapidly. Soils in rainforests store less carbon than soils in colder regions, but vegetation stores much more. Tall trees, dense canopies, and constant growth maintain this reservoir. When forests are disturbed, carbon cycling speeds up, and more carbon moves into the air. When forests remain stable, cycling stays gradual. Oxygen production follows a similar pattern. While rainforests produce oxygen during the day, oxygen is also consumed through respiration at night and during decomposition. Over long timescales, these processes balance out. The forest does not act as a constant surplus generator, but as a regulator within a larger system. As you reflect on this, notice how importance does not require excess. Rainforests matter because they maintain steady exchange, not because they produce endlessly. Balance itself becomes the contribution. In the next part, we'll explore how rainforests experience change without strong seasons, and how subtle variation replaces dramatic shifts. Rainforests experience change, but it is subtle. Unlike temperate regions, where seasons are defined by strong shifts in temperature and daylight, rainforests operate without clear seasonal boundaries. Instead of 4 distinct seasons, they move through gentle variations that repeat quietly over time. Day length near the equator remains nearly constant throughout the year. Sunrise and sunset times shift only slightly, and the amount of daylight changes very little. Because light availability stays steady, plants do not rely on seasonal signals to begin or stop growth. Leaves emerge, mature, and fall continuously rather than all at once. Rainfall does vary, but usually in degrees rather than extremes. Some months may be slightly wetter or drier than others, but complete dry periods are rare in true rainforests. Even during drier phases, humidity often remains high and short rain events continue. This allows biological activity to persist without interruption. Plants respond to these subtle shifts by adjusting timing rather than stopping. Flowering and fruiting may peak at certain times of year, often coordinated with rainfall patterns or pollinator availability. These peaks do not dominate the forest all at once. Instead, different species take turns, spreading activity across time. Animals also respond to these variations. Some may become more active during wetter months when food is abundant. Others adjust movement or reproduction slightly during drier periods. These changes are modest, allowing populations to remain stable without large migrations or population crashes. Because changes are gradual, the forest avoids shock. There are no sudden freezes, no rapid thaws, no complete dormancy. Systems adapt continuously, adjusting in small ways that maintain overall balance. As you rest with this idea, notice how stability does not mean stillness. Change is present, but it moves slowly, almost quietly. You don't need to track when one phase ends and another begins. The forest flows forward without clear edges. In the next part, we'll look at how small disturbances can have wide effects in rainforests and why dense ecosystems respond sensitively to change. Rainforests are dense systems where many processes are closely connected. Because of this, small changes can have wide effects, even when those changes appear minor at first. This sensitivity does not mean fragility in the immediate sense, but it does mean that balance depends on continuity. When a single tree falls, light reaches the forest floor. This change alters temperature, humidity, and plant growth in that small area. Seeds that require light may begin to grow, while shade-adapted species pause or shift. Insects respond to new plant growth. Birds and mammals adjust their movement. Over time, the gap fills again, and conditions return to their layered state. This is an example of a small disturbance that the system is designed to absorb. Other changes move more slowly. If a particular pollinator becomes less common, certain plants may produce fewer seeds. This can reduce food availability for animals that depend on those plants. The effect spreads gradually, not explosively, but it can reshape local relationships over time. Because species are specialized, changes tend to ripple rather than stop abruptly. Water flow offers another example. A small alteration in vegetation along a stream can change how water moves through the soil. This may affect moisture levels nearby, influencing plant growth and microbial activity. Over long periods, even subtle shifts in water distribution can reshape sections of the forest. These sensitivities exist because rainforest systems are optimized for efficiency rather than excess. Nutrients move quickly, space is used precisely, energy flows without large reserves. This allows high productivity, but it also means that continuity matters. At the same time, rainforests are resilient when changes occur slowly. Gradual shifts give organisms time to adjust. Populations adapt. Relationships reconfigure. The system responds through movement rather than collapse. As you sit with this idea, notice how responsiveness can coexist with calm. Sensitivity does not require alarm. It simply reflects connection. Everything is linked closely enough that change is felt, but not so tightly that it becomes disruptive. In the next part, we'll explore how rainforests persist over long periods of time and why longevity comes from balance rather than stability. Rainforests are among the oldest ecosystems on Earth. Many have existed in one form or another for tens of millions of years. Their longevity does not come from remaining unchanged, but from their ability to adjust continuously without losing overall structure. Instead of depending on rigid stability, rainforests rely on balance through movement. Trees grow, age, and fall. Species shift in abundance. Small disturbances appear and fade. At no point does the system aim to freeze itself in one state. Persistence comes from flexibility. This flexibility is supported by diversity. When many species perform similar functions, no single loss causes immediate collapse. If one plant species declines, others may fill part of its role. If one pollinator becomes less common, alternative pathways may still exist. This redundancy allows the forest to continue functioning even as details change. Time operates differently in rainforests. Changes that seem slow on a human scale can be significant over centuries or millennia. A slight shift in rainfall patterns may gradually favour different species. Over long periods, forest composition adjusts without sudden breaks. Evolution proceeds through small refinements rather than sharp transitions. Energy flow also supports longevity. Because nutrients cycle quickly, the forest does not rely on long-term storage that could be depleted. Instead, it depends on constant exchange. As long as sunlight and water continue to arrive, the system renews itself day by day. Even climate changes are often met with gradual response. Rainforests may shift in extent, move upslope or reorganize species composition. These changes happen slowly when pressure builds slowly. The forest's history is one of adaptation rather than resistance. As you rest with this idea, notice how endurance does not require effort. Longevity comes from allowing change to happen without breaking the whole. The rainforest continues not because it holds on tightly, but because it lets go and reform again and again. In the next part, we'll look at how humans study rainforests, and why understanding these systems requires patience and long observation rather than quick conclusions. Understanding rainforests requires patience. Because these ecosystems change slowly and operate through many small interactions, scientists cannot rely on short studies or quick measurements alone. Instead, rainforest research often involves long-term observation, repeated sampling, and careful attention to patterns that emerge over years or even decades. Researchers study rainforests in many ways. Some focus on individual species, tracking growth, reproduction, or movement over time. Others observe entire sections of forest, measuring changes in tree height, leaf cover, or species composition. These observations help reveal how forests respond to subtle shifts in climate, rainfall, or disturbance. One important approach is the use of permanent research plots. In these areas, every tree above a certain size is mapped, measured, and identified. Scientists return regularly to record growth, death, and regeneration. Over time, these records show how forests maintain balance, how gaps open and close, and how species interact across generations. Technology also plays a role, but it is used carefully. Satellite imagery helps track forest cover and large-scale changes, while sensors measure temperature, humidity, and carbon exchange. Even so, much of the most valuable data still comes from direct observation on the ground, where small details can be noticed and interpreted in context. Rainforest research is often quiet work. Scientists walk slowly, listen carefully, and record patiently. Many processes cannot be rushed or forced to reveal themselves. Understanding comes from watching how systems behave naturally without interference. As you sit with this idea, notice how learning mirrors the forest itself. It unfolds gradually. There is no need for urgency. Knowledge grows through attention rather than pressure. In the next part, we'll turn toward indigenous knowledge and how long-term human presence has shaped understanding of rainforest rhythms and resources. Long before modern scientific studies began, many human communities lived within rainforests and developed deep understanding of their rhythms. This knowledge formed through daily interaction rather than formal measurement. It was built slowly, across generations, through observation, memory, and careful response to the environment. Indigenous knowledge often focuses on patterns rather than isolated facts. People learn when certain plants flower, when animals move, and how weather shifts across weeks or months. These patterns guide hunting, gathering, and cultivation in ways that allow resources to renew themselves. Instead of extracting as much as possible at once, use is spread out over time. Many rainforest communities recognize subtle signs that indicate change. Small differences in insect sound, plant behavior, or water clarity can signal shifts in rainfall or seasonal variation. This awareness comes from close attention rather than specialized tools. Knowledge is maintained through storytelling, shared practice, and direct experience. Plants are often understood not only by their appearance but by their function. Leaves, bark, roots, and resins are used for food, medicine, shelter, and tools. This use is guided by long-term observation of effects rather than immediate results. When a plant is harvested, it is often done in ways that allow regrowth. Indigenous systems also tend to view the forest as interconnected, rather than divided into separate resources. Water, soil, plants, animals, and people are understood as part of the same living system. Actions are evaluated by their long-term impact rather than short-term gain. From a scientific perspective, this knowledge complements formal research. It provides context, historical depth, and insight into processes that may not be immediately visible through instruments alone. When combined, these ways of knowing offer a fuller picture of how rainforests function. As you rest with this idea, notice how understanding can come from presence rather than analysis. Knowledge grows when attention is steady and respectful. There is no rush to explain everything at once. In the next part, we'll widen the lens and look at rainforests through evolutionary time, exploring how millions of years shape the systems we see today. Rainforests did not appear suddenly. They are the result of long evolutionary processes shaped by climate stability, gradual change, and continuous interaction between species. Over millions of years, life adapted not to extremes, but to consistency. This long history explains much of the complexity we see today. Because rainforests remained relatively warm and wet through much of Earth's recent geological past, they acted as refuges during periods when other regions became colder or drier. While ice advanced and retreated elsewhere, many rainforest areas changed more slowly. Species that lived there had time to diversify, rather than migrate or disappear. Evolution in rainforests often favors specialization. When conditions remain stable, organisms can adapt to very specific roles. Small differences in food preference, light tolerance, or activity timing become meaningful. Over time, populations diverge, leading to high species diversity even among closely related organisms. Plants evolved alongside animals. Flowers adapted to particular pollinators. fruits evolved shapes, colours, and textures that match the feeding habits of specific animals. These relationships developed gradually, reinforced across countless generations. Rather than broad general solutions, rainforest evolution produced fine-tuned connections. Competition still exists, but it's often softened by niche separation. Instead of many species competing directly for the same resource, each occupies a slightly different position in space, time, or function. This reduces conflict and allows many forms of life to coexist within limited areas. As you rest with this idea, notice how time itself becomes a shaping force. No urgency, no sudden leaps, just slow adjustment, repeated again and again until complexity emerges naturally. In the next part, we'll continue widening the perspective by placing rainforests within deep time and considering how slow geological processes interact with living systems. When we place rainforests within deep time, their rhythm becomes easier to understand. Deep time refers to the vast span of Earth's history, millions to billions of years, during which continents shifted, climates changed, and life evolved gradually. Rainforests are shaped by this slow backdrop rather than by short-term events. Over geological timescales, rainforests have expanded, contracted, and shifted location. As continents moved and mountains rose, patterns of rainfall changed. Some rainforest regions dried and transformed, while others formed in new locations. These transitions were rarely sudden. They unfolded slowly enough for many species to adapt, migrate short distances, or diversify into new forms. Soil formation in rainforest also reflects deep time. Chemical weathering happens gradually in warm, wet conditions. Rocks break down slowly, releasing minerals that enter biological cycles. Over long periods, this process creates the thin but active soils that rainforests rely on today. Nothing accumulates quickly, but nothing stops moving either. Fossil records show that many plant families common in modern rainforests are very old. Their basic forms proved effective under stable conditions, requiring only small adjustments across millions of years. Leaves changed shape slightly. Reproductive strategy refined. Relationships with animals became more specialized. Deep time also explains why rainforests respond slowly to change. Systems built over millions of years cannot reorganize instantly. They adjust step by step, following physical limits and biological constraints. This slow response is not weakness. It is a consequence of long-established balance. As you sit with this idea, notice how scale alters perception. What feels permanent to us is brief, in deep time. What feels slow to us is active on geological scales. The rainforest exists comfortably within this pace, neither rushing nor resisting. In the next part, we'll look at patterns repeated across rainforests worldwide, and how similar structures emerge even when species differ. Rainforests around the world differ in species, appearance, and history, yet they share many structural patterns. These similarities emerge not because forests copy one another, but because similar physical conditions lead to similar solutions. Where warmth, moisture, and stable energy exist, life organizes itself in familiar ways. Vertical layering appears in nearly all rainforests, whether in South America, Africa, Asia, or temperate coastal regions. Canopies form, understories develop, and forest floors remain shaded and active. Even when tree species are unrelated, their growth forms converge because they face the same challenges of light and space. Leaf design shows similar patterns across continents. Drip tips, smooth surfaces, and broad shapes appear again and again. These features solve the same problems of shedding water and capturing light. Evolution selects for function rather than origin. Animal behavior also follows shared themes. Arboreal movement, specialized feeding, and energy conservation appear across different rainforest systems. A monkey in South America and a primate in Asia may not be closely related, but their movement through trees reflects the same physical demands. Soundscapes too show similarity. Layered calls, steady insect noise, and predictable daily rhythms occur wherever dense vegetation limits visibility and air movement. Communication adapts to structure, producing comparable outcomes in distant forests. From a scientific perspective, these repeated patterns help confirm understanding. When similar conditions produce similar results, it reinforces the idea that physical laws guide biological organization. Rainforests become examples of how life responds consistently to stable environments. As you rest with this idea, notice how familiarity can arise within diversity. Difference exists, but underlying structure remains calm and recognizable. You don't need to memorize examples. Let the sense of repeating order settle gently. In the next part, we'll explore scale, moving from the smallest organisms to the tallest trees, and how all levels remain connected. Rainforests contain life across an enormous range of scales, from microscopic bacteria and fungi to trees taller than many buildings. All levels exist together within a connected system. Understanding this range helps reveal how small processes support large structures without strain. At the smallest scale, microorganisms drive essential chemical reactions. Bacteria break down organic matter, fix nitrogen, and regulate nutrient availability. These processes happen invisibly, yet they determine how much energy moves upward into plants and animals. Fungi bridge scales by forming networks that connect microscopic activity to large organisms. Through mycelium, nutrients and water move efficiently from decomposing material to tree roots. This connection allows towering plants to rely on processes happening just millimeters below the surface. Plants then translate microscopic energy into visible structure. Through photosynthesis, leaves convert sunlight into stored chemical energy. This energy builds wood, roots, flowers, and fruit. Large trees are essentially long-term records of countless small chemical reactions repeated over years. Animals move energy between scales. Insects feed on plants and microorganisms. Birds and mammals feed on insects and plants. Predators feed on other animals. Each transfer is small, but together they maintain flow through the system. Importantly, no scale dominates. Large organisms do not overpower small ones. Instead, dependence flows in all directions. Without microbes, trees could not grow. Without trees, animal habitats would disappear. Balance emerges through connection. As you sit with this idea, notice how scale does not imply importance. Small actions sustain large forms. Large forms create space for small ones. Everything fits together without hierarchy. In the next part, we'll look at how rainforests connect to human climate systems, keeping the focus on measurable influence rather than exaggeration. Rainforests interact with Earth's climate systems in ways that are steady and measurable. Rather than acting as single controlling forces, they influence temperature, moisture, and atmospheric movement through many small processes happening at once. These influences become significant because of their scale and continuity. One of the most direct connections is through water cycling. As trees release water vapor through transpiration, they increase atmospheric humidity. This moisture contributes to cloud formation and rainfall, both locally and in regions downwind. Large rainforest areas can help maintain regular rainfall patterns over wide geographic areas, though they do not determine weather on their own. Rainforests also influence surface temperature. Dense vegetation absorbs sunlight and releases heat slowly. This buffering effect reduces extreme temperature swings. In contrast, cleared land often heats and cools more rapidly, creating sharper contrast between day and night. Carbon exchange is another connection. As discussed earlier, rainforests absorb and release carbon continuously. When forests remain intact, carbon moves slowly through living systems. When forests are disturbed, this movement speeds up, increasing atmospheric carbon levels. The effect is gradual rather than immediate, but it accumulates over time. Importantly, rainforests respond to climate as much as they influence it. Changes in rainfall patterns, temperature, or atmospheric circulation affect forest growth and distribution. This two-way interaction makes rainforest part of a larger feedback system, rather than independent regulators. From a scientific standpoint, understanding this relationship requires long-term data and careful modelling. Short-term observations can be misleading. Trends become clear only when patterns are observed over decades. As you rest with this idea, notice how influence does not require control. Rainforests participate in climate systems without dominating them. Their role is steady, distributed, and continuous. In the next part, we'll begin moving toward closure by reflecting on continuity within living systems and how rainforests persist through constant motion. Rainforests persist not because they remain unchanged, but because they maintain continuity through constant movement. Every process, growth, decay, exchange, and renewal happens without clear starts or stops. Life flows forward in overlapping cycles, each one supporting the next. Plants grow while others shed leaves. Animals feed while others rest. Microorganisms break down material even as new matter forms above them. These actions do not wait for one another to finish. They happen together, creating continuity rather than sequence. The system remains whole because nothing pauses completely. This continuity reduces stress on the ecosystem. When activity is spread evenly across time, there's no need for sudden bursts of energy or long periods of inactivity. Resources are used steadily. Recovery happens naturally. Balance is maintained through rhythm rather than control. For humans observing from outside, this can feel subtle. There are no dramatic seasonal markers, no moments when the forest clearly resets. Instead, change blends into stability. The forest is always becoming something slightly different, while remaining recognizably the same. As you sit with this idea, notice how continuity can feel calming. Nothing demands attention. Nothing insists on resolution. Processes continue whether or not they are observed. In the next part, we'll begin returning to the opening themes, reconnecting with the steady presence of rain itself. Rain is one of the most consistent features of rainforest life. It shapes soil, guides growth, and sets the pace for daily activity. Throughout this exploration, rain has appeared again and again, not as a dramatic force, but as a steady companion. When rain falls, it does not arrive all at once. It touches leaves, breaks into droplets, and moves downward slowly. This gentle movement protects the forest and sustains it. Even heavy rain is softened by layers of vegetation, turning impact into flow. Rain also creates sound, a soft, distributed presence rather than a sharp noise. This sound signals continuity. It reminds the forest that conditions remain favourable, that growth can continue, that moisture is available. As you listen now, You don't need to imagine a storm. You can simply notice the idea of rain as rhythm, something that arrives, moves through, and leaves without disruption. In the next part, we'll reflect on how life continues quietly even when attention fades, preparing the mind for rest. Even when movement slows and attention drifts, rainforest systems continue. Plants still exchange gases, roots still absorb water, microorganisms still recycle nutrients. Life does not pause when it is not observed. This ongoing activity does not require awareness or effort. It happens automatically, shaped by conditions rather than intention. The forest does not need to stay awake to function. Processes continue whether day or night, focus or rest. This can be reassuring. Systems built on continuity do not depend on constant vigilance. They carry themselves forward through simple, repeated actions. As you rest with this idea, you can allow your own attention to soften. Nothing needs to be held in mind. Understanding can remain in the background, just like the forest's quiet activity. In the final part, we'll bring this exploration to a gentle close, returning fully to rest. Rainforests remind us that complex systems can move calmly, that abundance does not require urgency, that continuity is enough. As this exploration comes to a close, there is no conclusion to reach, no lesson to take away. The forest continues whether it is being studied or not. Its rhythms do not depend on attention. You can allow your thoughts to slow now. Let details fade. Let patterns blur into steadiness. Everything flows. Sleep in that motion.